SpongeBob SquarePants!
Rewatching SpongeBob as an adult feels a little different. The colors are still bright, the jokes are still silly, but then you notice the weird details. Suddenly, you notice the cult references, the serial killer parallels, the brain damage, even philosophy about death and meaning. This Iceberg is all about peeling back those layers, and trust me, some of them are rotten. This is the disturbing SpongeBob Iceberg. Tier 1. Bikini Atoll Nuclear Test Theory. Alright, let's start with the theory everyone already knows. In 2024, Doug Lawrence, the guy who's been writing SpongeBob since its beginning and Plankton's voice actor, confirmed that all the Bikini Bottom characters are basically mutants. Every talking fish, squirrel in spacesuits, and sentient sponges are basically mutants cooked up by America's most infamous nuclear experiments. Let's rewind for a second. The city Bikini Bottom is named after a real place, Bikini Atoll. It's a coral reef in the middle of the Pacific. If you think it sounds tropical and chill, think again. In 1946, the US military showed up and told the 167 people living there they'd need to pack up and leave. Just for a while, they said. You know, for the good of mankind and to end all world wars. But in reality, nobody ever got to come back. And last time I checked, the world wars didn't really end there. Here's where it gets dark. Operation Crossroads. This was a big science experiment. Two 23 kilotons nuclear bombs dropped onto an atoll. The first bomb, Abel, went off in the air. The second one, Baker, exploded underwater. That underwater blast shot a mile-high column of radioactive water up into the sky. The fallout rained down over everything, wiping out the lagoon's fish, crabs, and every unlucky animal the Navy had hauled in as test subjects. So how does this connect back to SpongeBob? Hillenburg, the show's creator, wasn't exactly being subtle. He likely named the setting after one of the most infamous nuclear test sites on Earth. Even in the cartoons, the city's constantly exploding for no reason. Fish blow up, Krabby Patties blow up, even SpongeBob himself explodes a few times every season. It's just like daily life. The theory's been around for years, and fans love pointing to little hints. Bikini Bottom constantly explodes, Sandy needs a suit to survive, and even The Patrick Star Show dropped a flashback gag with a nuclear testing area sign. This theory's been passed around for years, but in 2024, the whole SpongeBob crew basically shrugged and said, yeah, it's true.
I always liked the theory that the whole thing was related to the atomic testing in Bikini Atoll.
Oh, yeah, shit. And that is true. That is absolutely
It is true.
Not subtle, not happy. But hey, it does explain a lot. By the way, even though this theory makes sense, it's actually been debunked by the next one, which is the evolution theory. In the special episode Big Birthday Blowout, SpongeBob and his friends visit a pet shop on land. Inside the aquariums, there are fish just floating around, silent, unblinking, like you'd see in real life. Then you have the main cast, the Bikini Bottom crew. SpongeBob, Patrick, Squidward, Sandy, the whole gang. They wear clothes, they go to work, they celebrate birthdays. They're basically people, except, you know, they're sea creatures. So why the huge difference? Why are some fish just silent extras while others are living sitcom characters? That's where YouTuber Alex Bale comes in. According to him, there are three possible answers: radiation, evolution, or divine intervention. First up is a classic explanation, the Bikini Atoll theory. Like we covered before, this one says Bikini Bottom's residents are mutants, created by radiation from America's nuclear tests in the Pacific. But Alex builds a counter-argument with his second theory. How? Because there are episodes like the prehistoric special with SpongeGar, Patar, and Squog, where SpongeBob and his buddies are already walking and talking, long before the atomic age. This means evolution in Bikini Bottom didn't start with radiation. It started way earlier. So if not nukes, then what? The weirder explanation is divine intervention. The idea is that King Neptune himself granted sea creatures their human-like traits, giving them intelligence and society. This comes from the episode Feral Friends, where Neptune's moon passes over Bikini Bottom. Its light instantly devolves everyone into regular sea creatures with their personalities erased. The narrator explains this moon appears every 100 years to reset everything. If you're thinking, that's messed up. Yeah, it is. And Alex takes it even darker. He suggests this so-called evolution eventually led to a war. In the Krusty Krab training video episode, the narrator mentions a war that left Mr. Krabs totally wrecked, broke, and depressed. But the show never says what the war was about. Alex connects the dots and he thinks it was a war between the evolved human-like sea creatures and the unevolved primitive ones. Bikini Bottom's prosperity was built on colonization, but with fish. And this is where things start heading into even darker territory. The Krabby Patty conspiracy, and some pretty suspicious theories about Mr. Krabs and Pearl. The secret of the Krabby Patty. The Krabby Patty is supposed to be just a burger, right? But if you watched SpongeBob as a kid, you know it was never just a burger. In every episode, somebody's losing their mind over it. It made you wonder, what's in that thing? Now let's start theories. The biggest one ties back to Pearl, Mr. Krabs' daughter. She's a whale, he's a crab, and the show never explains how that works. Pearl's mom is missing, and that's the first red flag. That's when you peek inside Krabs' house. There's harpoons on the wall, framed whale portraits. Even in the Wet Painters episode, there's a photo of a massive whale wrecking a ship. And when Pearl goes feral in Feral Friends, she looks just like that monster whale. In real life, when a whale dies, its body sinks and becomes a whale fall, feeding sea life for decades. If Krabs ever found Pearl's mother that way, it could explain his endless meat supply and why he spoils Pearl despite being notoriously cheap. A payoff disguised as parenting. Once she's off to college, who'd question if she never came back? This theory stacks up because Pearl is the only whale in Bikini Bottom, making her one of a kind. And suddenly, Krabs' favorite phrase, "Mother of Pearl," sounds like his guilt coming out. Of course, the show throws out plenty of distractions about the secret formula. Krabs jokes about 4 pounds of plankton in every patty. Some fans say he wiped out every other crab in Bikini Bottom. Others throw out the idea the patties are basically addictive, like drugs, which kinda makes sense after you see Squidward in just one bite. But outside the show, creator Stephen Hillenburg already gave the real answer. Krabby Patties are vegan, which is funny enough considering SpongeBob later end up in a Wendy's collab. So it could be a whale or crabs. But the scariest answer is the simplest one. The real secret is that there is no secret. It's the mystery itself that hooks everyone. And that's a masterclass in branding. But why did Krabby Patties become loved by Bikini Bottom and Plankton became the loser? Well, we'll talk about that in tier 2. But first, let's talk about the 7 deadly sins theory. You ever notice how each of the SpongeBob characters kinda feels like they're built around one really obvious flaw? There's this fan theory that ties them down to the 7 deadly sins. And once you hear it, it just sticks. Take SpongeBob. He represents lust. And no, not in the gross way, but in how he loves too much and too hard. He gets obsessed with people who don't want him around, like in Dying for Pie, where he basically stalks Squidward. It's wholesome, but also uncomfortably needy. Then you've got Patrick, and yeah, he's sloth through and through. He doesn't work, he sleeps all day, and he literally won an award once for doing absolutely nothing longer than anyone else. That's his whole deal. Squidward is easy. Wrath. He's always irritated, always mad, and half the time it takes almost nothing to set him off. SpongeBob just laughing can ruin his whole day. There's even an actual song. I hate people, people hate me. Sandy fits pride. She's brilliant, super strong, and she makes sure everyone knows it. Whether it's bragging about Texas or showing off her latest invention, she's quick to remind the others how much better she thinks land creatures are. Even in pressure, she'll argue for hours about how she's better than any sea creature. Mr. Krabs is greed. That one's obvious. He'll cut corners, underpay SpongeBob and Squidward, and chase after a penny like it's treasure. If there's money involved, he's interested. Plankton is envy. His entire existence revolves around stealing the Krabby Patty formula because he just can't handle that Krabs has something he doesn't. It's not even about building his own thing. It's all jealousy. Gary represents gluttony. He's always meowing for food. And in the treats episode, he gets so hooked on snail bites that he forgets about SpongeBob completely. Food wins every time. When you put them all together like that, Bikini Bottom starts looking a lot less like a happy little cartoon town and a lot more like a colorful version of hell. Every sin wrapped up in one neighborhood under the sea. Tier 2. Chum Bucket and Krabby Patty real ingredients. Chum Bucket has always been the butt of every joke in Bikini Bottom. Nobody eats there. Everybody gags at the smell, and Plankton's food is the fastest way to get a one-way ticket to the hospital. But what if I told you that Chum Bucket's reputation isn't just about bad cooking, it's the ingredients. In real life, Chum is ground up fish parts used as shark bait, which means Plankton's been serving blended fish corpses as food. If you're a fish in Bikini Bottom, you're basically eating your cousin. If Alex Bale's evolution theory is right, those unevolved background fish might literally be Plankton's secret ingredient. He's feeding Bikini Bottom their less fortunate cousins. Now, here's the twist. Krabby Patties aren't totally clean either. In the episode Friend or Foe, it's revealed the original recipe that was shared between Krabs and Plankton actually included a pinch of chum. So while everyone mocks Plankton's restaurant, they're secretly eating the same thing at the Krusty Krab, just hidden under better seasoning. Even Krabs himself has a taste for it. In The Hankering, he admits he got hooked on chum during his Navy days, when food options were limited. Biologically, it makes sense, since crabs are omnivores and sometimes eat other crabs. But in SpongeBob's world, it plays like one of the show's nastier jokes. The richest guy in town is addicted to the food nobody else wants. So are the residents of Bikini Bottom cannibals? Not exactly, but they're definitely not innocent vegetarians either. The truth is simple. Chum is disgusting. Plankton's real failure isn't that he's serving fish, it's that he never figured out how to make it taste like a Krabby Patty. Spongebob is immortal. It all starts with Squidward's worst nightmare. In Season 1's SB-129, he locked himself in the Krusty Krab freezer just to get away from Spongebob. When he finally gets out, he's already in the distant future. And who's still there, totally unchanged? SpongeBob. Not just one, but 486 of him, running around loud as ever. Squidward can't escape him, not even at the end of time. Squidward then jumps to the prehistoric past, where caveman SpongeBob is already there. Squidward even teaches him jellyfishing, and thousands of years later, future SpongeBob remembers it, which makes it feel like the same SpongeBob looping through history. He's not just everywhere, he's everywhen. Some fans say these are just ancestors or alternate versions, but the show doesn't play it that way. Every SpongeBob is the same character, same voice, same chaotic energy, no matter the time period. You can freeze him, blow him up, erase him from history, and he always comes back. It gets even more meta when you look outside the show. SpongeBob isn't just Nickelodeon's mascot. He's a $13.7 billion global empire. He's not dying anytime soon. Plot armor, lawyers, and merchandising guarantee his immortality. So yeah, whether it's prehistoric caves, the end of time, or the next season premiere, SpongeBob will always be there. Immortal in the story, immortal in real life. Now, I know what you're thinking. If SpongeBob is immortal, what about Margaret and Harold? That's what we'll talk about next. Is SpongeBob an adopted child? Alright, even if you believe SpongeBob was born, you must be wondering why he looks nothing like his parents. Seriously, you've got Harold and Margaret, round, brown, used kitchen sponges. Then you've got SpongeBob, a yellow and square kitchen sponge, which got fans asking, what if SpongeBob is actually adopted? There's one episode people point to, Truth or Square, where SpongeBob imagines himself as a baby inside Margaret's belly, snacking on a Krabby Patty. Cute, sure, but it's not science. Real sponges don't have wombs. They reproduce externally, so that flashback is just SpongeBob's imagination, not evidence he was born that way. So what's the real answer? Biology says sponges reproduce by releasing little cells that mix and grow into new sponges. Basically, the family tree can spread in all kinds of directions. And when you look at genetics in general, it's the same idea. Traits can skip around. You can get a tall kid from short parents, a blonde kid from brunettes, or in this case, a yellow square from two round brown parents. It's just how genes work. And SpongeBob's family tree proves it. He's got an uncle who looks almost identical to him, and in prehistoric flashbacks, you see all sorts of sponge-shaped relatives. Turns out, looking different isn't proof of adoption. It's just part of the mix. Even Gary is Patrick's cousin. Evolution in Bikini Bottom just loves a curveball. So no, SpongeBob's not adopted. He just happens to be the odd square in a family of circles. If anything, the bigger mystery is why we all thought they were cookies. Is SpongeBob autistic? There's a long-running fan theory about SpongeBob that skips right past the supernatural and lands squarely in the real world. What if SpongeBob is actually autistic? Fans have pointed out for years that SpongeBob's quirks lines up with traits of autism. He thrives on strict routines, takes things literally, and sometimes misses social cues that everyone else seems to get. Like in boating school, he clings to his good noodle chart for structure, or when he's told to wait somewhere, he'll stay there forever. And when he loves something like jellyfishing, work, or his friends, he's always 100% all in. For years, it was fan speculation. Then, in July 2024, Tom Kenny, the voice of SpongeBob, got asked directly if SpongeBob is autistic.
Is SpongeBob autistic? Wow. Is SpongeBob himself autistic? And I said, yes, of course. I said, of course he is. And I said, you know what? That's his superpower. The same way it's your superpower.
He didn't hesitate. Yes, of course. That's his superpower. That's the heart of this theory. SpongeBob's quirks aren't a joke at his expense. The show celebrates his honesty, his loyalty, and his ability to find joy in the smallest things. And for a lot of fans, especially those on the spectrum, that's why he resonates so deeply. So yeah, SpongeBob might be autistic, but the point isn't that he's different, it's that his difference is his strength, and Bikini Bottom wouldn't be the same without it. Earworm. Earworm is one of those episodes that takes a catchy jingle and took it so far that it's basically a horror comedy. It starts simple. SpongeBob is just grilling up patties at the Krusty Krab, humming on an irritating little tune that immediately annoys Squidward. You can already tell the song's about to become a problem, especially when SpongeBob can't stop singing it, even as he's trying to close up for the night. Squidward's no help either. He tries to drown out the tune with his radio, only to discover the radio is playing the exact same song. SpongeBob snatches the radio and turns up the volume, belting out the chorus in the most inescapable way possible. Mr. Krabs finally tells him to clock out, but SpongeBob's already lost. He hears the tune again at a music shop, buys the record, and spends hours spinning in circles at home, totally unaware of the time. And then comes the breaking point. A literal earworm had crawled into SpongeBob's head, turning the metaphor into something way nastier. Now it's not just a song stuck in his mind. He's possessed. Every thought, every word, every move is just the chorus on repeat. At this point, he's not SpongeBob anymore. He's just a vessel for the song, trapped in an endless loop. That's where the episode lands its punch. It's not about a silly jingle anymore. It's about what happens when obsession takes control. A catchy melody becomes a parasite, and SpongeBob becomes its host. The surface level gag is about catchy songs, but the real horror here is how SpongeBob loses control of his own mind. The episode is a straight up depiction of obsession and compulsion. Come to think of it, there are actually a bunch of SpongeBob episodes that dive into mental breakdowns and real world issues. And I've got one more episode in mind that tackles mental health. And honestly, I think it's even more disturbing than this one. That episode is, Are You Happy Now? There are dark SpongeBob episodes, and then there's Are You Happy Now? It opens with SpongeBob giggling over his memory book at the Krusty Krab. Just a small moment of joy. But then he asks the one question you should never ask Squidward. What's your happiest memory? Squidward stops. He looks up and realizes he has no happy memories at all. He just breaks down in front of everyone. For a kid's cartoon, this is already bleak. The show doesn't even try to soften it. Squidward is completely empty inside. SpongeBob tries to fix it the only way he knows how, dragging Squidward through concerts, museums, even a hot air balloon ride. Of course, each attempt backfired, piling on pain, embarrassment, and disappointment, until Squidward became even more depressed. That's when the episode takes its darkest turn. Squidward mutters, "Maybe this will help," as he opens the oven, framed like he's about to end it, until it's revealed to be just burned brownies. Moments later, he grabs a rope and stool, staging what looks like another suicide attempt, only to reveal he's hanging a birdcage. It's a bait and switch, but the imagery is unmistakable. Squidward is not okay. In the end, SpongeBob throws him a surprise party, filling the room with papier-mâché clones of himself. For Squidward, it's pure horror. He snaps, tears every one of them apart, and finally admits this destruction is his happiest memory. He finds joy not in art, music, or adventure, but in absolute chaos and destruction. Nickelodeon eventually pulled Are You Happy Now from regular rotation. The network decided it was just too dark for kids, especially with those scenes that so blatantly reference suicide and clinical depression. And believe it or not, that wasn't the only dark SpongeBob episode. There's another one with the same disturbing theme, and yet Nickelodeon still put it on TV. Fans hated it so much it caused major backlash. The episode is one course meal. We'll get to it in Tier 3. The television theory. Imagine Bikini Bottom as The Truman Show. A giant underwater set, loaded with hidden cameras, fake neighbors, and an entire cast of actors who know the truth. Except for SpongeBob himself. Sounds nuts, right? Except the show practically hands you the evidence. Let's start with the biggest clue, the narrator. The French narrator is one of the most recognizable voices in the whole show. But he isn't just a voice in the sky. In the episode No Free Rides, SpongeBob's wild driving sends his boat car right into the narrator, who turns out to be a regular human guy, scuba suit and all, complete with a film camera and a big underwater set light. But the single most convincing moment comes in Season 6's Truth or Square. SpongeBob, Patrick, and Squidward get lost in the Krusty Krab vents and stumble across a mysterious locked room. Inside of it is live video feeds from every single building in Bikini Bottom. Literally every angle of every character, recorded at all times. When the trio confronts Mr. Krabs, he just mumbles some excuse about making sure you floss after every meal. After that, inside the surveillance room, SpongeBob and the others caught 2 camera crew recording them. They're not just part of a cartoon. They're unwitting stars in an endless reality show, where everyone around them might be in on the act. Fans poke holes in the theory, but the clues pile up. Bikini Bottom doesn't feel like a city. It feels like a stage set, with actors, crew, and one clueless main character who doesn't know he's on TV. Tier 3, the skin theory. This theory exploded after Doug Woolever's legendary hour-long breakdown, and it's been haunting fan forums ever since. The basic idea is simple. In Bikini Bottom, tearing off your own skin or wearing someone else's happens way more often than it should. The first big what the hell moment pops up in the episode Dying for Pie. Squidward walks around in a salmon costume that looks more like real skin than fabric. Imagine a friend showing up in a jacket made of human hide. And it's not just that one episode. In Shell of a Man, Mr. Krabs literally crawls out of his shell, and SpongeBob just hops in like it's an empty jacket. There's even an episode where Sandy tears off a tattoo off a guard's skin, and you can see the flesh underneath, and nobody freaks out. But the creepiest reveal comes in Imitation Krabs. So here's the setup. Plankton tries, once again, to steal the Krabby Patty secret formula. This time he builds a robot that looks exactly like Mr. Krabs. So at one point in the episode, SpongeBob is told to be extra careful. He's paranoid, on edge, scanning every customer. Then someone walks in and starts asking about the secret formula, and SpongeBob snaps. He assumes it's Plankton in disguise, so what does SpongeBob do? Casually pulls the guy's heads off, and it's not Plankton, just some random fish. Instead of panicking, the guy casually says, "Everyone at the head enhancement clinic said nobody would notice." A costume store would have been a throwaway joke. But a clinic? That makes it sound surgical, like people in Bikini Bottom are actually swapping or replacing their heads. It's part body horror, part social commentary, and it blurs the line between costume, identity, and straight-up cannibalism. Mrs. Puff is a criminal. On paper, Mrs. Puff is just SpongeBob's long-suffering driving instructor, but look a little closer and it's clear she's hiding a whole other life. Let's get into the evidence. First up, her name isn't even Mrs. Puff. Her real identity is a total mystery. Whatever went down in New Kelp City was bad enough that she dumped her whole life, skipped town, and started fresh with a new school, new city, new name. If that isn't classic fugitive behavior, I don't know what is. And seriously, why does nobody ask more questions about this in Bikini Bottom? The whole town just shrugs and signs up for boating school. But the rap sheet's where things get really wild. Since rolling into Bikini Bottom, Mrs. Puff's been arrested 8 separate times. 8. That's not bad luck. That's a pattern. We're not talking about little stuff either. She's been picked up for boat theft, destruction of property, and a few counts of just plain chaos. There's that one episode, No Free Rides, where she hotwires SpongeBob's boatmobile without even blinking. Those aren't the hands of someone improvising for the first time. That's muscle memory. She knows exactly what she's doing. You don't just pick up skills like that teaching teens to parallel park. Plus, there's the paranoia. This isn't just someone who's a little bit jumpy. Mrs. Puff is chronically anxious, always looking over her shoulder, acting like the cops are closing in. And when it comes to her mental state, it's even darker. In Demolition Doofus, she actually throws SpongeBob into a demolition derby, clearly hoping he doesn't survive. When that fails, she snaps, takes the wheel herself, and tears through crowds until the school turns into rubble. It's so disturbing we'll break it down fully in the next entry. But here's what makes her more suspicious. When she gets caught, does she break down or beg for forgiveness? Nope. She just sighs and mutters, "I'll have to move to a new city, start a new boating school with a new name." No, not again. That "not again" hits different. You realize this isn't her second act. This is her thing. She's done it before, probably a bunch of times. Town to town, crime to crime, new persona every time she gets caught. So bottom line, Mrs. Puff isn't just a teacher. She's a fugitive, a repeat offender, and probably the most chaotic person in Bikini Bottom besides SpongeBob himself. Demolition Doofus. Alright, as I said before, let's get into one of the most unhinged episodes SpongeBob has ever produced. Demolition Doofus. It starts with SpongeBob's usual chaos during boating lessons, except this time he crashes so badly that Mrs. Puff literally exploded. The doctor tells her she can't puff up again and it's all SpongeBob's fault. Lying in a hospital bed, Mrs. Puff finally breaks. When she hears about a demolition derby happening nearby, she secretly signs SpongeBob up, hoping the mayhem will finish him off once and for all. And the next thing that happens is less a test and more a murder attempt. SpongeBob, clueless as ever, somehow survives every crash. Mrs. Puff is losing it, literally. She even breaks down crying, yelling for SpongeBob to just die already. Then she jumps into a monster boat herself, tearing through the derby, smashing bystanders, and finally crashing straight into her own school. The impact ironically restored her ability to puff up again, but the damage is done. We've just watched her risk innocent lives, destroy her school, and try to kill SpongeBob, all for a taste of freedom. One course meal. This episode is the most hated, most controversial episode in SpongeBob history, and it's not hard to see why. Plankton has one crippling fear: whales. Makes sense, because whales eat plankton. But in one course meal, Mr. Krabs takes that fear and turns it into torture. For weeks, he dresses as Pearl, stalks Plankton, and scares him day after day until the guy has a mental break. Plankton stops sleeping, barricades himself inside, and hallucinates whales eating his family. It bottoms out when Plankton lies down on the street and waits for a bus to run him over. One of the show's clearest depictions of suicide, right next to Squidward in Are You Happy Now? Fortunately, SpongeBob finds him just in time. He realizes what Krabs has done and actually calls him out. How does Mr. Krabs respond? By laughing. People hated this episode. Fans everywhere slammed it for treating real trauma and suicide like a punchline. Even the cast reportedly felt gross about it. Clancy Brown, the voice of Mr. Krabs, allegedly had to be forced to record his lines. Online ratings bombed. 3.7 out of 10 on IMDb. Petitions popped up demanding Nickelodeon pull it from the air. Some people even quit watching SpongeBob for good. Squidward can never leave the Krusty Krab. Why? Squidward hates his job. So why doesn't he just quit? That's where things start to feel off. He's actually walked out plenty of times. In Big Pink Loser, Patrick replaces him. In Bossy Boots, he walked out when Pearl took over. Even in Krusty Towers, he quit and became a customer just to annoy Mr. Krabs. But no matter how many times Squidward quits, the pattern never changes. He always ends up right back at the register. The biggest clue shows up in Squid on Strike. After Krabs slashes SpongeBob and Squidward's wages, Squidward finally rebels. But SpongeBob got so carried away by the rebellion that he literally destroyed the Krusty Krab. After that, Mr. Krabs declares they'll have to work off the damage forever. It plays as a joke, but the theory says this was a binding deal. Squidward sold his soul for minimum wage. From that moment on, he's stuck with the Krusty Krab. Not only that, there's another layer to the trap. Mr. Krabs himself. Over and over, Krabs sabotages Squidward's life to keep him miserable but useful. In Culture Shock, he sells tomatoes so the crowd can throw them to Squidward during his big show. In The Masterpiece, he refuses to promote Squidward's art. And in Hello, Bikini Bottom, Krabs hijacks Squidward's one shot at music success. Every time Squidward gets close to a break, Krabs shuts it down, making sure his cashier has nowhere else to go. Mr. Krabs is literally a devil. And the saddest part is Squidward doesn't even realize it. He still dreams of being an artist, not knowing the register is his forever. Smitty Werbenjagermanjensen. This episode takes Mr. Krabs' greed to its absolute low point. It all starts with one Krabs trash, where Krabs is, surprise, running another scam. He's selling random junk to people at a yard sale by pretending his trash is treasure. Then comes a cheap soda drinking cap with number 1 printed on it. Krabs tricks SpongeBob into thinking it's special, even though it's literally worthless. And like always, SpongeBob falls for it. He forks over his last few bucks and walks away. The thing is, this hat actually belonged to someone. Smitty Werbenjagermanjensen. Yeah, say that 3 times fast. This is where the drama starts. Out of nowhere, serious collectors start showing up. He offered SpongeBob $1 million. Suddenly, Mr. Krabs does a 180. He tries to get his hat back with manipulation. Krabs invents a ghost story, telling SpongeBob the hat belonged to a dead man and keeping it will curse him. SpongeBob buys it and buries the hat at Smitty's grave. After that, Krabs waits until night, sneaks into the graveyard, and literally digs up Smitty's grave. He even pauses, asking himself, "Am I really going to defile this grave for money?" And immediately answers, "Of course I am." But the universe isn't having it. The second he yanks that hat out, Smitty's skeleton rises from the dirt and demands his hat back. After that, an entire army of skeletons pops up and chases Krabs for robbing the dead. Krabs runs for his life, hatless and humiliated. And just to rub it in, when he tries to sell the hat later, it's suddenly worth nothing. So next time you see Mr. Krabs, just remember, this is the same guy who would literally dig up a grave for a soda hat. And people say SpongeBob is for kids. Tier 4. Have you seen this snail? In the episode of You Seen This Snail, it's supposedly just about SpongeBob losing his pet. But some fans argue the episode borrows from a real-life serial killer story. The episode starts off pretty chill. It starts simple. SpongeBob gets obsessed with the new toy in the mail and ignores Gary completely. Hungry and neglected, Gary finally leaves home to find someone who'll care for him. That's when he meets a sweet old lady who showers him with food and affection. At first, it feels like paradise, until Gary notices she keeps calling him by another name, and her closet is full of empty snail shells. Suddenly, the kind grandma looks more like a serial pet killer. Here's where the true crime connection comes in. The setup mirrors Belle Gunness, a notorious killer from the early 1900s who lured men to her farm with lonely hearts ads before murdering them for insurance payouts. She's believed to have killed at least 14 people, the exact number of empty snail shells shown in the episode. The parallels keep stacking. Gunness drew in victims with care, just like the old lady with her snails. She left behind a yard full of skeletons. The episode shows Gary discovering a room full of shells. Even the air date of the episode, November 11th, matches Belle Gunness's birthday. And like Belle, the old woman's final fate is left a mystery. For a lot of people, this episode was just a weird, kind of sad adventure about a pet running away. But if the references are intentional, it doubles as a morbid nod to one of America's darkest murder cases. And that's why SpongeBob hits different. It's goofy, but sometimes it's got layers way darker than you'd ever expect. The secret cult hidden in SpongeBob. Goofy Goobers isn't just a goofy ice cream bar. It might be Bikini Bottom's answer to a real-world doomsday cult. Let's start with a real cult. Ever heard of Heaven's Gate? These guys were dead serious about aliens. Literally. In the 90s, 39 people in California joined a group convinced that an alien mothership trailing the Hale-Bopp comet would take them to paradise. So what's their way out? Mass suicide, plastic bags over their heads, and enough sleeping pills to knock out a whale. This wasn't a group of weirdos either. We're talking doctors, programmers, boutique owners, people with real jobs. Just goes to show cult thinking can grab anyone. So why are we talking about a 90s alien cult in a SpongeBob video? Because Alex Bale dropped the theory that Goofy Goobers is a straight up parallel to Heaven's Gate, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. Let's break down the evidence. First up, Goofy Goobers is supposed to be just an innocent ice cream bar for kids. But there's this one episode, The Goofy Newbie, where Patrick gets a job there. As part of orientation, he's shown a company video listing the rules. Always be clean, do good work, and believe in extraterrestrials. Why would an ice cream place tell you to believe in aliens? Not exactly your usual HR training video, right? But there's more. The building itself has a UFO theme. It's got this flying saucer shape, floating right above the shop. And in a blink and you miss it moment, the founder of Goofy Goobers literally steps inside the UFO and vanishes. It gets creepier. If you pay attention, everyone who enters Goofy Goobers has to put on official merch. Not just the staff, but the customers too. It's not about hygiene, it's about identity, making you part of the tribe. They even have a theme song that's honestly a little too catchy. That's classic cult behavior. Get people singing the same song, dressing the same, until suddenly you're not just eating ice cream. You're one of them. Now here's where the brainwashing angle comes in. In the first SpongeBob movie, there's a scene where SpongeBob and Patrick can't help but sing the Goofy Goobers anthem. And well, honestly, me too.
Sing along, Patrick. Trying so hard. I'm a Goofy Goober, yeah.
Doesn't matter how much they resist. The second they hear that tune, they're in. Other random fish get swept up too. The Goofy message spreads, like everywhere. If you've ever seen cult documentaries, you know that's exactly how it works. Songs, rituals, and group identity used to break people down. Let's talk about worship. Remember the Goofy Goober mascot? The peanut? It's more than a mascot. It's actually an object of worship. In the movie, SpongeBob and Patrick use the word worship. That's the same term cults use for their idols or leaders. There's even a SpongeBob video game where you collect coins that say, "In Goofy we trust." Total rebrand of "In God we trust." But now the peanut's the higher power. And in a Patrick Star spin-off, you catch an ice cream vendor obsessively reading a book with an ice cream cover. Sounds innocent, but it's just like how cult members obsess over texts about their leader. Why else would a vendor read about ice cream all day? Feels like indoctrination, not inspiration. Put it all together, the uniform, the songs, the worship, even the alien angle, it matches Heaven's Gate far too closely to be a random gag. Whether the writers meant it as a dark joke or just leaned into cult tropes for fun, Goofy Goobers carries some of SpongeBob's creepiest undertones. The Mystery of Goo Lagoon. Goo Lagoon is basically the town beach, even though everyone's already underwater. But in the episode It Came from Goo Lagoon, something strange happens. A freaky, purple, bouncy, stinky blobs of, well, nobody's really sure what, starts bubbling up from the depths. SpongeBob and Patrick, of course, treat them like toys. They bounce around, laugh, and don't think twice. Sandy shows up and tells them this isn't safe, but they ignore her. And before long, the whole beach is covered in slime. The goo explodes, spreads everywhere, and Bikini Bottom turns into a giant mess. That's pretty much where the episode leaves it. The show never explains what the goo really is. That's where fans step in. One theory is that it's just pollution. Goo Lagoon is drawn like a lake inside the ocean, which is a real phenomenon in marine science. So maybe the goo is chemical runoff or oil waste, colored purple by the animators to make it look weirder. Stephen Hillenburg, the creator, was a marine biologist, so slipping in an environmental warning would be reasonable. Another theory is darker: dead jellyfish. In real life, huge swarms of it sometimes wash up, rot, and turn into purple sludge. Norway actually had this happen. Whole stretches of coastline covered in decaying jellyfish goo. Goo Lagoon's salty water could easily kill a swarm and create the sludge we see in the episode. If that's true, SpongeBob and Patrick were basically bouncing around on jellyfish corpses. Or it's the jellyfish blob caused by a different thing: climate change. As the oceans heat up, jellyfish swarms are becoming more common and harder to control. Some places even built underwater machines to shred them because they clog power plants and fishing nets. If Goo Lagoon's blobs are a nod to that, then, well, that's kinda gore. So the goo stays a mystery. But whether you see it as a cartoon gag or a pile of corpses, Goo Lagoon doesn't feel like a fun beach anymore once you think about it. SpongeBob is a mass murderer. Who knew this friendly, clueless guy next door is actually even more dangerous than Jack the Ripper? The theory starts when Sandy refuses to take him on her moon mission. And at first, you might think it's about space or rocket fuel or just not enough room in the ship. But then Sandy drops this line. She says, "Especially after your little mishap with my whirly bird. That's not a toy, it's a helicopter." Which means SpongeBob already crashed one of her machines and it ended badly. The show never spells it out, but it really doesn't need to. All you have to do is look out Sandy's window. Her backyard is a graveyard. I'm talking about fresh graves, all lined up with tombstones sticking out of the grass. That leads to the bigger theory. Sandy covered up the disaster to protect SpongeBob, either because he pressured her into silence or because the fallout would have destroyed her reputation. The show never confirms it, but the graveyard itself is enough of a red flag. But SpongeBob's body count doesn't end there. Later, he and Patrick accidentally launch Sandy's rocket. And what's the first thing they do? They start rounding up every single resident of Bikini Bottom, convinced they're aliens. One by one, they haul their friends and neighbors into the ship, trapping them without a second thought. It's played off as a comedy bit, but if you step back, it's actually pretty disturbing. SpongeBob gets a little power, and suddenly he's the guy locking up the entire town. Even Sandy, who tries to call him out, just gets ignored. But you can tell it's not just a slap on the wrist. She's genuinely freaked out by what he's capable of. The evidence is everywhere, if you know where to look. SpongeBob's not just a happy-go-lucky fry cook. He's one bad day away from turning Bikini Bottom into a ghost town. And honestly, most people there have no clue. Tier 5. SpongeBob is not SpongeBob anymore. If you've ever wondered why SpongeBob feels so different after Season 3, you're not alone. By the way, this theory was proposed by Sinian. For example, take the Secret Box episode. SpongeBob used persuasion tactics like ethos, pathos, and logos to try and outwit Patrick. And Rock Bottom, he MacGyvered his way out of a lost-in-the-dark situation, thinking his way through every problem. Sure, he was silly, but it was controlled chaos, like he knew when to stop. That's what made him lovable. Then everything changed in Season 3, Episode 8, Squilliam Returns. This is the turning point. In this one, Squidward needs SpongeBob to act like a 5-star waiter, so he has him read this monster-sized book, like 1,000 pages in minutes. SpongeBob freaks out. His brain literally swells up, catches on fire, and splits in half. Squidward tells him to empty his mind of everything that doesn't have to do with fine dining and breathing. SpongeBob wipes himself clean, and he never really comes back. From that point on, he fails his boating test endlessly, panics when he loses his name tag and missing identity, and acts like he's forgotten the person he used to be. There's also a side theory that he actually died in the 2004 movie during the Cyclops scene. And what we see afterward is a doppelganger SpongeBob reproduced asexually. It's bizarre, but sponges can do that in real life. Still, the brainwipe theory lines up more directly with what we see on screen. If you're still not convinced, creator Stephen Hillenburg originally wanted the show to end after 3 seasons and the first movie. That was supposed to be the goodbye. But because SpongeBob is a Nickelodeon cash sponge, they kept him alive. But something fell off, like the real SpongeBob had already left. Which is why, for so many fans, the SpongeBob we grew up with never returned. At least, not all the way. Behind closed doors. Back in the early 2000s, SpongeBob's crew had a secret tradition. When the workday ended, storyboard artists would cover the backs of office doors with crude sticky note drawings. And these weren't just goofy doodles. They were graphic, off-model sketches that Nickelodeon would never want the public to see. One artist, Sam Henderson, didn't let them vanish. He collected the pages, bound them into a spiral notebook, and gave it a brutally honest title. Behind Closed Doors. Horrible, filthy, vile, disgusting, inappropriate off-model drawings by the crew of a popular cartoon show. To protect identities, he scrambled the names into anagrams, but it was still clear who drew what. For years, the book stayed hidden. Then, in July 2023, the secret broke out. An anonymous ex-Nickelodeon employee got hold of one of the original notebooks and sent scans to YouTuber LS Supersonic Q. He previewed 6 of the images in a video, and within hours, the internet exploded. But what was actually in the book? Well, nothing Nickelodeon would ever want you to see. But the characters were not exactly safe for work. SpongeBob was caught in the middle of some, let's just say, lewd activities. Mr. Krabs showed up in some really unfortunate bathroom situations. And Squidward, yeah, he got turned into a walking, talking body part. You get the idea. So yeah, sleep tight, knowing the next time you watch an old episode, The person who drew it might have left something a lot less wholesome on the back of a studio door. SB-129. If you ask fans for the weirdest SpongeBob episode, a lot of them point to SB-129. The setup is simple. He locks himself in the Krusty Krab freezer, wakes up 2,000 years in the future surrounded by SpongeBob clones, panics, and jumps into a time machine. Instead of peace, he lands in a blank, endless white space. It's the first time Squidward actually gets what he claims to want: total silence. But it's terrifying. The void is Squidward's existential crisis made real. He's desperate to escape SpongeBob and Patrick, so he ends up in a place with nothing but his own thoughts, and discovers that it's worse. This lines up with Nietzsche's concept of eternal recurrence, where life just loops endlessly. In SB-129, Squidward runs in circles, gets nowhere, and even when he finally returns to Bikini Bottom, he's trapped in the same cycle, dodging SpongeBob, hating his job, ending up miserable again. It's less an adventure and more a cartoon version of an existential panic attack. Maybe, for a moment, the void gives him perspective. Some fans say he comes back a little calmer before the loop resets. And that's the bleak beauty of SB-129. It's funny on the surface, but it's actually meditation on loneliness, futility, and the endless grind of being Squidward. The guy deserves a break. And this is all for this iceberg. Actually, there's a ton more theories out there on YouTube. And if you think you've got a better theory, drop it in the comments. See you in the next iceberg.